Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have a great show coming your way today on Gojo and Golic. Lots of great guests to look forward to, including Navy QB Blake Horvath. He will join us ahead of Saturday's matchup with the guys Notre Dame. Plus, Amin Elhassan going to join us in studio. He's going to talk about NBA opening night. And Jason Fitz. He's going to join us to talk NFL, to talk college football. All that and more coming up on today's episode of Gojo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. We got a great show for you. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review it. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings network. We will get to all of the great guests that Jesse mentioned. We will get to all of the fun from NBA opening night as we got the moment everyone had been waiting for with the Los Angeles Lakers and the LeBron James and his son. We got a very interesting bit of unexpected drama for the Celtics opening night banner ceremony and ring ceremony. But we also got drama this morning, Dad, as we are presented by Campbell's Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal. And this meal involves DeAndre Hopkins now getting on a plane and going to Kansas City, where he'll enjoy many meals of barbecue. As we got the news this morning, that DeAndre Hopkins is working on finalizing a trade. I should say the Titans and the Chiefs are working to finalize a trade that's going to send him to Kansas City, according to league sources telling Adam Schefter. The Titans would receive a conditional 4th-round pick. It's expected to be completed today. And so, Dad, we've got now the impending bit of NFL trade deadline work that we know is always going to come up. This is a league where people have started to move a lot more around the deadline, but this Kansas City Chiefs team in particular, we have seen just how deficient they've been at receiver. This last weekend, winning against San Francisco after losing Juju Smith-Schuster to a hamstring injury. We know they had already had Hollywood Brown on the shelf, or C. Rice on the shelf, and so this seemed vital, Dad. How much does DeAndre Hopkins in particular, you think, help this Chiefs team?
Well, I mean, he certainly is not what he was. Let's say that. He's 32 years old. He's in his 12th year. His third team played with Houston and Arizona. Did have 1,000 yards last year on 75 receptions for Tennessee. So listen, he's still a talented wide receiver. And for Kansas City, you mentioned the guys that are out. They're two healthy wide receivers. Xavier Worthy and Justin Watson have combined for 22 catches through week 7. So that's not a whole lot. We talk about them making chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what because of Patrick Mahomes, but this is really starting to empty the bin as far as what they have available. And again, remember, Isaiah Pacheco, who catch the ball out of the backfield, is down as well. A lot more going to fall on Travis Kelce, who I'm sure can handle it. But as far as stretching the field, you obviously have Xavier Worthy to do that, but you need another set of hands, another set of trustworthy hands. So, like I said, he's not what he was, but he could still be what he was, on occasion. Again, 1,000 yards last year, average over 14 yards a catch. So he still can be that guy, and they weren't going anywhere in Tennessee. Maybe he gets revitalized, refreshed, going to Kansas City, a team that's undefeated. So they had to make a move, right? They had to get somebody. You can't just keep trusting on what you have going down the roster, and picking off the practice squad to try and make another run at the Super Bowl. That they were in a dire situation because of injury to go grab a very competent receiver, and that's what they did.
Yep, DeAndre Hopkins, who had come off a shoulder injury that was Hollywood Brown. DeAndre Hopkins had dealt with an offseason knee injury that kind of slowed him down leading into the season. I think he was out a little bit at the end of the fourth quarter with what they called lower leg soreness. This last week, we'll see, that could be like Devontae Adams' hamstring, where it's amazing how much healthier he is now that he's on a team with a quarterback that can get him the football, as opposed to what had been going on with the Titans for the majority of this year. Dad, I'm going to be interested to see how the Chiefs integrate him into this offense, because DeAndre Hopkins, you mentioned, especially at this point in his career, has never been a guy that's been a dynamic separating receiver, but he's a great contested catch receiver. He plays that big sort of bodied X receiver role that Kansas City hasn't had much of. And so for a team that's used to getting people into roles, figuring out what they do best, and then Andy Reid and these play callers trying to find and replicate that as often as possible, I'll be interested to see what they can do with DeAndre Hopkins, because he's not a full sale fix, but at the same time, we've seen how much they've gotten out of guys like Juju Smith-Schuster that others have not been able to make work in the same way. And so I trust Andy Reid in this group, and it's one of those situations, like you said, it's one of the moves they had on the board. Now, this is interesting because it comes in conjunction with some other reporting that we heard yesterday, and we'll play you that sound here in a minute from our buddy Diana Rossini over at The Athletic, who joined the Dan Levitard show guys yesterday, talking about Cooper Kupp, Dad, and that name had been floated around in the trade ether for a while yesterday. That was the big name that everyone had been talking about, and the asking price on that sounded like, according to the reporting from Diana and Jordan Rodrigue, a second-round pick from the Los Angeles Rams. And then there was the question of how much salary they were going to take on for the year, and all those things that, according to Diana Rossini this morning, were stopping points for the Kansas City Chiefs. Diana tweeted that the Chiefs had discussed Cooper Kupp, but they needed the trade with a team that was willing to take on a large chunk of salary and didn't want to give up high picks. So, showing some restraint here as they make a midseason move. Are you surprised by that part of this?
Yeah. I mean, listen, you have to live with the cap as well, and quite honestly, I mean, Coop, listen, straight up, there'd be no comparison right now, both healthy, of who you would take, right? Even though Cooper Kupp's 31 and DeAndre's 32, Cooper Kupp just finds a way to be open and catch the ball all the time. But he's not healthy. He's got that ankle. He's missed 13, been 22 and 23, missed 13 games. So, I mean, that you don't know when that's going to pop up. That has been a hindrance for him. So that would be a little scary to add the price that it would cost to get him. And then if he were to go down with that ankle injury, would be, I think that loomed there as well. Listen, if you're close to the cap, if you have money issues, DeAndre Hopkins was making $5 million base salary this year that the Titans are going to pick up some of. So it was financially a lot easier to trade for Hopkins and fit him into this offense. You have Xavier Worthy to, like I said, to stretch the defense. So the worrisome thing for me, I love Cooper Kupp, but it is just so worrisome me, that ankle, that has just absolutely messed with him the last couple of years.
Jesse, can we get to the sound from yesterday with Diana? What exactly was she doing with the Le Batard guys?
Yeah, I mean, so she mentioned another receiver that could possibly be on the move here in a couple weeks, Cooper Kupp, who we've been talking about here. So we know about the DeAndre Hopkins things, but here's what she had to say about Cooper Kupp to the guys.
Cooper Kupp, Kansas City Chiefs. Is there a chance?
If the Rams are willing to take on the salary I heard that they're willing to do, so they are definitely open to trading Cooper Kupp. So we'll see if they'll be able to get a deal done. I just don't think Kansas City has even enough money, even if the Rams were to take on some of that salary. That's been the problem and the reason why they haven't been able to go after a Devontae Adams, an Amari Cooper, like we've seen other teams be aggressive with. You have DeAndre Hopkins in Tennessee. I know that there's been some teams keeping an eye on that one. And then I know the Kansas City Chiefs are 6-0, but I think it was pretty apparent that they're winning every single game in a different way. But they could use a receiver. So I'm expecting the Kansas City Chiefs to make a move between now and November 5th.
They did make that move, and here we are. But what do you guys think about the Kupp stuff? Do you think he's going to be on the move in 2 weeks between now and then?
It certainly seems like it, Dad, and I'd be stunned now. You know, Cooper Kupp was working out pregame this last week against San Francisco, trying to see if he was going to be a go, was ultimately made inactive. And now heading into this short week, I think it participated in their walkthrough, so was a full participant, but it's a Thursday night week, so that's a short week with a walkthrough practice. I can't imagine there's any way he's going to see the field now for them on Thursday night as they try and figure this out with a very stated goal. I know Cooper Kupp has said, I'm aware of the reports. I'm going to be where my feet are and focus on this team, but given what you mentioned about the injury background, there's no way the Rams are putting him out there on Thursday night to risk further injury when this is now what they're looking at. Because you look at this Rams season, a season that started off this offseason with so much promise after the finish of last year. All of these injuries, the youth on defense have sort of combined to create a situation where apparently now the Rams, instead of last year, where remember, beaten up by injury, Matthew Stafford down for a little bit, the Cooper Kupp still coming off injury, and they caught fire the second half of the season and looked like a playoff team and made this great run. Apparently the folks in Ramsland less confident in that this time around, Dad, and looking to become sellers now with Cooper Kupp, which is, I won't say surprising, but it's definitely an indictment on how this organization views this year's team.
Yeah, and listen, you're not out of that division. That division became pretty meh with San Francisco and the injuries, right? San Francisco kind of came down to everybody. 4-3 leads the division. LA's just one game out at 2-4. So I'm kind of surprised. But again, they're there every day. They know what's going on every day if they don't feel confident. Now, Cooper Kupp's going to cost you money, right? He's got a base of 15 this year, 12-5 next year, 14-8 the year after that, a cap hit of 29, 29, and 27 in the next 3 years. So it's going to cost you some money unless you get the Rams to pick up some of that tab as well, or Cooper Kupp restructures his deal. That's has a price tag attached to it with a bad ankle attached to it. So that will take a little more finagling, I think, to work out a trade there.
I mean, teams that you'd probably expect to be in the mix for that, Dad. We knew the Chiefs were going to be contenders in the receiver market here. The Steelers, obviously, a team that's looking to grow their downfield passing game and have been for the while. We talked about the Commanders and some of the receiver market before. Maybe add someone out there outside of Terry McLaurin to go along with this burgeoning offense. The other one I think would be interesting to keep an eye on, Dad, because coming off this last weekend, we said receiver seems like a dire need. Actually, it was coming off Monday night when they played in the back half of that doubleheader. The Chargers could make it very easy for Cooper Kupp to walk across the other side of the building and just go to that new facility in El Segundo, because that's a team that Justin Herbert and that offense seem to have hit their cap in terms of how much you can just harball your way through with beef up front when you've got very little, if any, for Justin Herbert to throw it to. So Cooper Kupp to the Los Angeles Chargers would be a fascinating headline for me if they're willing to eat that and maybe use him as that one guy to start a foundation at receiver. If they think, hey, where we've reset the rest of this foundation is capable of making a bit of a run and maybe being a fringe playoff team this postseason.
Yeah, how about a place like Buffalo? I know Keon Coleman is coming along. Shakir had the ankle issue. You got two tight ends that you're trying to count on, but I wonder. Well, I wonder if Buffalo.
But even after already bringing over Amari Cooper, though.
Oh yeah. You're right. My bad. Forgot about that. That's old man there.
We got to sort of ex-Buffalo because they have been in that pipeline of teams that needed receivers. Yeah. And you know, we mentioned the Baltimore Ravens sort of in that group as well, although that feels maybe less necessary now given how great that offense has looked, spending capital on that side of the ball. I know we mentioned, hey, you brought Derrick Henry into the number one rushing offense, and it felt a little redundant last year, but this might border on absurd, especially if Rashad Bateman's going to keep producing like that. So I think those are the teams that I'm most interested to see with Cooper Kupp potentially out there. Since, again, DeAndre Hopkins going over to the Chiefs, and it's one of those moves, Dad, everything the Chiefs do feels like it'll work because you've got Pat and Andy and Travis and Chris Jones, who's playing exemplary football on the other side of this. But it's going to be, I don't think, like a savior situation for the passing game, given where DeAndre is at this point in his career. I think you get closer to last year where he made a lot of plays with Will Levis, did it in an offense that was moving around the quarterback situation quite a bit, and has been in hell this year. I think you're going to get closer to last year, but I still don't think that's new number one receiver in the offense type production just yet.
No. What you're going to get is a dependable receiver, right? That's what you're going to get. Because as I said, right now, the two healthy ones are Xavier Worthy and Justin Watson. So you have a dependable vet in DeAndre Hopkins who you can trust running routes and on the field. And I think that's imperative now for Kansas City. He will fit right in with the veterans in Kansas City, with Kelsey, with Pat Mahomes, with Andy calling the plays. I think it's a nice pickup for him.
Definitely a nice pickup for them. They had to make a move and did. So, again, DeAndre Hopkins for a conditional fourth-round pick going from the Titans to the Chiefs, and a deal expected to be finalized today. Shout out to our buddy Diana Rossini on being ahead of the curve on that one. We'll get into plenty more football headlines as we go along in the show, Dad, but we talked about it a lot yesterday. Last night was NBA's tip-off of the season. We know the big opening night for the majority of teams is going to come up tonight, but we had a couple of games last night. We'll get to Knicks Celtics and the banner ceremony in a little bit, but in the nightcap, we had the Los Angeles Lakers and the Minnesota Timberwolves in a game that was going to feature, we thought, or were expecting, a little bit of father-son action, and it turns out we did get just that. LeBron James played 13 minutes prior to joining the floor for the first time with his son, Bronny James Jr., who went out there with him to a great ovation and made them the first father-son duo to play together in NBA history, joining four other groups that had done so across Major League sports in all the different leagues. But, Dad, how was watching this moment for you? I mean, obviously, we get to do the father-son thing here every day. Hearing LeBron talk about it after the game was pretty reminiscent of the way that we've sort of approached this. But for LeBron, seeing this moment with the two of them, what that mean for you?
Oh, I mean, as a dad, I mean, what a proud moment that had to be. And I wonder if he had a chance to take it in the moment. They both came in together with 4 minutes to go in the second. They both came off the bench. So they were able to, or at least LeBron was able to maybe savor the moment. I'm sure Bronny was just nervous as hell, going into a real NBA game for the first time. He ended up playing 3 minutes. He was 0 for 2. But if Bronny had a chance to kind of cherish the moment, if he wasn't on the court when Bronny came in, like I said, they both came off the bench. So had to be very cool. And you mentioned, it's worth mentioning for a little history lesson in the other sports. In hockey, Gordie Howe played with his sons, Mark and Marty. Gordie Howe played with at least one of his kids for 7 seasons. And mostly in the WHA, but 1 year they played for the Hartford Whalers in 79 and 80 in the NHL. Obviously, we have the Griffies. In Major League Baseball. And also Tim Raines, at 42 years old, got traded to Baltimore, where his son Tim Jr. got called up, and they played 4 games together. And then in football, you have to go way back to 1921. Ted and Charles Nesser. Ted was a player coach for a Columbus team in the American Professional Football Association, and I'm sure people would think, well, what the hell is that? Well, in 1921, that American Professional Football Association turned into the NFL, and Charles and Ted Nesser played together that year, so there was a father-son actually in the NFL as well. So I know that was right at the start of the NFL, so it was a while ago, but just wanted to give a little history lesson there to that. But, I mean, what an incredible moment, and who knows how much they'll play together. We know Bronny doesn't have a two-way contract. It's a contract to to be on the Lakers. Yeah, I don't expect it to be much. In all honesty, I mean, for him to improve, he needs to play in the G League and get reps, right? He needs to get on the court and play. He's not going to do that sitting on the end of the bench for the Lakers.
I think this was really smart for J.J. Redick and LeBron to get out of the way now. Get through this.
Agreed.
This was the moment that everyone was looking for here, and now you can go about the business of actually trying to play out this season. There'll still be lingering questions about if and how much he's going to play and a lot of the same things that we're going to follow him in general, but this was the fascination. This was part of the circus in the early season where we know, hey, attention overall is going to be limited outside of the NBA sickos to how much of this they're going to digest. You gave the people what they want. J.J. Redick gets win number 1 as a head coach. Oh, by the way, last night, they get to tack on this historic moment, and we get to ask our friend Bailey on the show here some existential questions about the post-Karl Anthony Towns Minnesota Timberwolves going and losing to this Lakers team. Coming up next, we'll hit the rest of opening night in the NBA here on Gojo and Golic. By the way, in the midst of LeBron James and Bronny gracing the court last night, the Lakers also played and won a basketball game, 110-103 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And, Dad, it feels like Groundhog's Day already with the analysis of this team because J.J. Redick in Game 1, I'm sure we can talk to Amin Elhassan about what he saw from him in his coaching debut, if there's really anything to take from last night on that front. But Anthony Davis, the actual star of the show, going off for 36 points in the game last night, and ever present offensively, defensively. He was dynamic on both sides of the court. And it brings up kind of what we've talked about since the beginning of the LeBron James era in terms of the analysis of the Lakers, which is if Anthony Davis would ever just be that guy full time, and I understand asking him to go for like 36 and 12 every game might be a bit extreme, but the point is, when he's the star of the show, this looks like a franchise that could maybe go out and accomplish something, especially in a Western Conference where that has sort of the standard. You've got to have the bigs to be able to go out there and compete, but that's always been sort of intermittent, and it's waxed and waned, especially when we've got to the postseason. So we wait for that level of consistency there, and to see if LeBron James is ever really going to fall off over the course of a long season, stay healthy, all the usual problems for the Lakers that have manifested in the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's same old until you get to the playoffs to see who's healthy and who can play at the level. Anthony Davis goes for 36 and 16, has 4 assists, 3 blocks, 13 of 15 from the free throw line. And by the way, played the most minutes, played 38 minutes, played the most minutes of all the players on the Lakers. So that's not going to last. We know that's not going to last. So it's just a matter of how close can he stay to that when it matters. It's horrible to say, but you got 81 more games now for the Lakers, for 4 teams, 81 more games, 82 games starting tonight for everybody else. And there are some teams where you just kind of going through blah, blah, blah until you get to the playoffs, right? And the Lakers are one of those teams. They're one of those teams of what can they withstand, the play of AD, the health of AD. We keep waiting for LeBron to have a drop-off in his 22nd season. He goes for 16 and 5 in the game. So it doesn't, he looks like he's in great shape again, but there's still older players who are going to get nicked up. So you just wait and wait and wait, like we do with other teams, like Embiid with the 76ers, like any other big man out there that you rely on. Is you wait and see how healthy you are when it matters most.
Dalton Connect, their rookie, got in the game out of Tennessee, scored 5 points in this one. Anthony Edwards had 27 points on the other side for the Timberwolves, who had their first game post Karl Anthony Towns with this core. And Julius Randle had 16 points in this game coming over in that trade. Dante DiVincenzo had 10 points. It's going to take a while there. There's a lot of new parts that they're going to have to rely on there, and certainly a big one they took away in how that offense functions. We talked a lot about that, and it was interesting to watch Karl Anthony Towns' former team lose on that first night and his current team lose in a night where he hit the under on every conceivable point, rebound, or assist mark that you could have had for him in the sports book as he limped into a debut against a Boston Celtics team that really had only their competition with history. But before we get to that, Jesse, I need to be blessed by something here because we are back so much that Weird Joe Mazzulla just came KoolAid Man stomping through the walls to remind us all what time it was. This is just electric stuff from this maniac.
Yeah, so during the ceremony, the ring ceremony, the banner, everything, he kissed the floor, got down there and just kissed the floor. And here's what he said it tasted like afterwards.
Blood. Maybe I wish I did. When I got the ring, I don't know. This thing's too big. I don't know why it's so big, and I'm never gonna wear it. But it's cool to have. Kind of what I thought. Yeah, I was more fascinated by the banner because I come in here every afternoon and take a look at those, and they represent so much. And so the banner was the highlight for me because it represents a lot of things that go into it, and then the rafters have a life of their own in this building, and so it was that moment was the coolest.
The stream of consciousness is just fascinating. You love to see it, and I'm not sure why he wishes the floor tasted like blood, but I'm glad it didn't.
The new season of What We Do in the Shadows drops, and Joe Mazzulla forgets you're not supposed to tell people that you're a vampire. That's day one vampire stuff. And yet he lets it slip there. Dad, the reason I trust Joe Mazzulla to continue to be such a successful head coach is because misery is his primary setting as a human being. Just brushed right past any sort of joy in the moment, immediately critical of the ring, already recognizes that, like we hear from most great coaches, when you win something of that ilk, you're behind everybody else in terms of preparation. He seems thoroughly miserable with success in the way that the truly successful coaches are.
And he sounded normal for a minute, saying the ring is nice, but it's too big. I'll never wear it. I'm sure that's the truth for a lot of people. And I actually liked his moment of saying, to me, the big thing is the banner. you know, of you actually get to visually see that every time you walk into the arena, that you're part of the great history with the banner. But then he talks about the floor tasting like blood. The other day he talks about
he wishes it tastes like blood. It tastes like blood. He laughed and then said, I wish it did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wishes it tastes like blood. He said there's zero pressure on the team because we're all going to die at some point, so it doesn't matter. So he gets a good stream of conscience, like I liked with the banner, but then he throws in the wants the floor to taste like blood, and we're all going to die, so it doesn't matter, and you just don't know what you're going to get.
No, it's fascinating to watch. I've never wanted a GoPro on someone when they leave the arena more than Joe Mazzulla, who seems like I would imagine his living situation is like Matthew McConaughey in True Detective Season 1, where he just goes home and stares at the tiny mirror on the wall. But either way, whatever he's doing works, because whether it's the combination of off-season motivation for the stars of the Celtics via the U.S. men's basketball team in the Olympics or what have you, they came out like they were shot out of a cannon, Dad. The only competition that the Celtics encountered last night against the New York Knicks was the competition between themselves and history, as they spent nearly 9 minutes on the cusp of breaking the NBA record for single-game three-pointers hit. They were sitting right on the edge for it. They had 29 three-pointers with 8 minutes and 54 seconds left, and then spent the next 8 minutes chucking up dirt. They had 29 makes and then missed 13 consecutive threes to end the game when they were clearly going for it. You could tell now. They called off the Dogs with about a minute left and opted to not take any shots then out of respect for the Knicks at that point. But that was it was like, Dad, the energy in a stadium when you've got someone at the free throw line and they miss two and everyone in the crowd gets a free chicken sandwich. That was the energy that Celtics home crowd got at the end of this game last night.
Yeah, and I don't blame him for just holding the ball at the end and dribbling out the play clock at the end, because they had, as you mentioned, 13 chances for the record and just threw up brick after hitting so many. That was just amazing that they missed as many as they did. So I get it at the end saying, screw it, we had our chances. Now we're just going to dribble the ball out. And you wonder, everybody talks about the Olympics and Jason Tatum and not playing in a couple games and not playing that much. Was this to show everybody that he should have been out there? Scores 37, only takes 2 free throws. Is 14 of 18 from the field, 8 of 11 from three-point land, has a monster game. And there are going to be those that are say that was to be in the face of the Olympic, the team, that he didn't play. I find that hard to believe that he's holding that grudge. And I mean, doesn't he try and play great every night? But I guess he was just going for it tonight because of the Olympics?
Well, I don't think it's that he was going for it specifically last night because of the Olympics. Quite honestly, last night I would buy more. Hey, the energy in the building on ring night's got to be electric. When you're honored for this thing that you've worked so long for, to want to go out and pay that off with a win. I also can't imagine how much it's got to suck if you're a new guy on a team that's having their ring night, to watch everybody else go and get their rings for this thing that you missed the accomplishment of by 1 year. Has to suck. I don't know who on this Celtics team, because they brought back so much of their core from last year, would even apply to, but it's the first thing I thought of. I would buy that. But Dad, I would absolutely buy as motivation going into a season that Jason Tatum comes in a little bit of extra piss and vinegar because he's ticked off about what that did to him reputationally this summer. Again, not for any single game, and it's a long season, but in the prep leading up to the year and the way that you get ready for it, I can absolutely imagine athletes, especially great ones, are maniacs in terms of the petty things they'll let that get them. I mean, hell, Kirby Smart last week was talking after the game against Texas about how nobody believes in them. Like, yeah, people picked against them, but plenty of people believe in you, Kirby. You're the best program in college football. So that's how these guys are wired. I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah, you find that chip to put on your shoulder. There's emotion in the moment. I'd like to I don't have the research obviously in front of me, to see teams, what the record is in the 4 majors of teams having their ring and banner ceremony and playing in that game, of what the record is. Because we saw the Chiefs lose last year, right, to Detroit, 21-20, after their ceremony. So I just wonder what the record is of professional teams on the night of their ring ceremony going into their first game.
Well, and listen, especially depending on level of competition, the Chiefs played a very good Detroit Lions team. And certainly last night, the Boston Celtics played a New York Knicks team that's expected to push them in the Eastern Conference this year and just got flattened early. This is how this league works, especially in make and miss three-point league. You can get buried under the hill pretty quick. So Knicks fans didn't have a lot to cheer about in this one during the game pretty much instantly, but thankfully one of our producers got a chance to go and catch up with some Knicks fans before the game here. So let's check out some of the excitement in the lead up to that with a little Knicks fan man on the street last night.
Obviously, we're all talking about the Nova Knicks, Jaylen Brunson, Josh Hart, that connection. How big of an influence do you think that it's going to have on their success this year?
Finals. I think that's a narrative. I think it's basketball at the end of the day.
I don't think it's going to impact the Knicks.
Well, I think Dante was a big loss, but I think Cat is going to get right tonight.
It's going to be a good vibe this year.
You believe in Big Cat?
I believe in him, and I've been believing in him.
All right, so what do you think about Mikal changing his jump shot, though? Are you, in favor of that, or are you kind of on the fence?
I don't know why it's new. I'm not worried yet, but he got till tonight. But if the shot is not hitting, Tibbs, get Deuce in there. The form is weird, but he played well last year for Brooklyn.
I mean, he's now shooting like Bill Cartwright.
Shooters going to shoot, shooters adjust. It'll be all right.
Bing bong, there we go.
Yeah, that's some real New York.
We going to the finals this year. Oh, brother. Pray for this guy. Bing bong, no.
Great stuff by Billy out there with the Knicks fans. And, all right, if they're giving Mikal Bridges till tonight, then, Dad, the early returns on that new jump shot form, not great. Now, he finished with 16 points, but was 2 of 7 beyond the arc. And you could tell very uncomfortable with that. And it's the same thing we talk about with a lot of guys, whether it's a quarterback who's trying to change his throwing motion in the offseason or tweak his mechanics. It's all well and good until you get to live action and have to try and replicate something that goes against the muscle memory you've built up for some time. So I'm not sure what prompted him to try and change it up, Dad, but it's a long season. You've got to kind of bank on working this out and knowing that it's going to make you worse for a while before it gets better. But for him and Karl Anthony Towns, definitely a slower start than some might have predicted. Cat 12, 7, and 3 last night. What'd you make of his first outing?
Are you surprised you only took 9 shots? I mean, Brunson obviously led the way with 14 shots. Bridges had 13 shots, and he had 9 shots. There were 2 guys coming off the bench that had more shots than Cat. So that was I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I did as well. I thought they were going to feed him a little bit more early on to try and get him comfortable and sort of get him in the flow of this team. And even some of the matchups there, some of the post-up stuff when he got, big little matchups with Drew Holiday that I heard Shaq and Charles harping on him about. But just in general, it is going to take some time because what he represents at the center position is a massive departure from what they had last year with the guys that were on there between, Julius Randle, Isaiah Hartenstein, and the other guys. They're used to occupying that role. And so I do think at times in the NBA, we sort of underrate. He just got this trade made, and they trot him out there in the starting lineup and are trying to go make this work on night 1 against the defending champions who have more continuity than almost anybody in the league. So when you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous. But hey, Knicks fans on the street, they're not supposed to make sense. It's not supposed to sound sane. It's supposed to be bing bong and a bunch of other fun sounds after that. And on we go. So we'll get some more of that. Amin Elhassan going to join us later on the show. But coming up next, a big weekend in college football. We're joined by one of the best quarterbacks in the country who's going to go and try and make our alma mater's night a living hell on Saturday. We'll get to that next here on Gojo and Golic. All right, welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. It's a big week in a lot of ways in college football for our Notre Dame Fighting Irish. One of the, it's a rivalry game in a way, but I call it more a tradition because there's never animosity in this game between Notre Dame fans and the Naval Academy when you get ready to play Navy. But that's the week coming up now, Dad. It's so different. I always told people it was the only home game where the opposing team got cheered for louder than we did coming out of the tunnel. I know you experienced this as well. There's really nothing like it.
This is going to be a tough interview, wishing that this young man has a bad game, because I so respect, like you and your brother did when you guys were at Notre Dame. You just respect when you play the armed forces because you know what these men are going to go on to do. Far more important things than play a football game. And I remember going over and shaking hands with them after the game, standing behind them when their alma mater was being played, and just having so much respect for them, for what they do and what they're going to do, that, again, that's going to make this interview very, very difficult because I don't want this guy to play well.
Unfortunately, that's all he's done so far this year. We're delighted to bring on Navy starting quarterback Blake Horvath, who's with us here now in the midst of Notre Dame Navy Week. You've got Navy ranked in the AP top 25 right now, a robust passing attack right now, 10 passing touchdowns on the season against just one interception. Blake, good morning, man. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well, man. So take us into the other side of this, because as we mentioned, there's so much history between Notre Dame and Navy from a football sense, off the field. What is preparing for this game like on the other side? We know for you guys, the Commander-in-Chief trophy, playing against the other service academies, is at the top of the list. But what is Notre Dame week like from the Navy side of things?
Yeah, I think just like you said, it's a huge tradition. And, we don't treat it as much as a rivalry as the other service academies with the CIC, but looking at everything this game stood for and what each team is sort of meant to each other, and just the fact that, we get to play in these big games as a group of 5 school, and getting to play against Notre Dame every year and be on national television on ABC this week, it's just really an honor, to be truthful. And so, we treat it like any other week, how we're going to prepare, don't want to make the spotlight too big. And I think that's the biggest thing for us is just, playing our own game.
So what's the difference this year? In 22, Navy was 4-8. Last year you played some. You guys were 5-7. This year you're 6-0. What's been the difference in the teams from this year and the past couple years? Yeah,
I think there's a different confidence level this year coming into the season, just how we prepared through spring and how we prepared through fall, and also more confidence in our coaches and the guys leading us. And we brought in a great new offensive coordinator this year in Drew Cronick, and he's doing an amazing job just with his vision and how he's leading us. And a lot of guys also stepping up in leadership roles, as, Dabo Fofana, our captain, and offensive linemen who, may have had a reduced role in ways. And I think the cohesiveness of our offensive unit has been really great this year.
You mentioned Drew Cronick. He was the head coach at Mercer before coming over there this season, and everyone maybe who's used to thinking of Navy football thinks of the traditional wishbone triple option. How big a departure has what he's brought to this offense been from what you guys were used to around there?
Yeah, I think it really added just some new layers into what we do, and what Coach Cronick does really well is he knows how to get players the ball in ways to be successful, I guess. And he doesn't force players into roles that they don't need to be in. And so I think that's been really huge. It's getting, our pass catchers the ball in space, and guys who can make a move out on the edge. And, Alex Tesko, a guy can fly, get him the ball moving down the field. So I think he's done a really good job at that and not forcing guys into roles that they don't have to be in. And also he's a really great play caller, and he can set things up really well and sort of lull defenders to sleep with a lot of runs, and then come back and hit a pass right over the top. So I think he's done an amazing job at that.
What I was going to say, I mean, you're a running team. You've run the ball 276 times. You passed it 81 times, but you have 46 completions. And of those 46 completions, you have 10 touchdowns. I mean, it's an amazing ratio. So when you were practicing like in fall camp for this year, how odd was it throwing the ball more in camp, knowing you were going to have a bit more of a passing game?
Yeah, I thought it was a lot different because going into it, obviously, I experienced the end of the Coach Ken era in that sort of situation. But, going then it was, pass on third down when you absolutely need to, maybe a pass here and there to try and catch them off guard. Now, we can come out there and it might be pass on first down, pass on second down, pass on third down. Just how our offense sort of works this year. And I think that was really different coming into the year, was seeing that sort of unfold against our own defense when we're going out there and we're doing openers on drives and first downs and we're passing a lot. I think that was the biggest thing, is not being afraid of other guys, and other athletes, because we have some pretty great athletes ourselves.
You mentioned being there for the end of Coach Ken Niumatalolo's run at Navy, one of the best in the program's history, and now Coach Newberry taking over, who was your guys' defensive coordinator. How have you seen him try and put his own stamp now that he's the head coach of this football team?
Yeah, I think what he did a really great job of was not trying to remove Coach Ken's legacy here and what he's done and everything he built while he was here. We're just trying to build on that, really. And Coach Newberry has his own stamp, and we say a lot, but it's just the 1-0 mentality has really been preached this year, and it's really just about staying in the present. Worrying about the next play, the next game. We always say the most important game is just the next one, and not looking forward to Army or looking past Notre Dame or even looking to Notre Dame or Army when we're at the beginning of the season. And I think it's just about staying in the moment and worried about where we're at. And I think he's done a really great job of that, and not trying to force himself to be Coach Ken, because Coach Ken's a unique person, and he's sort of trying to make his own legacy here at the Naval Academy, which I think he's done a great job of. And I'm really excited I think all the guys are excited to be playing for him.
We talk about your offense and how good it's been, but spend a moment, talk about your defense. 6-0, only 2 games you guys have given up your defense has given up over 20 points, 21 to Bucknell and 44 to Memphis. Other than that, it's been under 20 points.
Yeah, Coach Vulker, our defensive coordinator, he's done a great job. He was the guy that recruited me out of Ohio, and he just has such a great enthusiasm about what he does, and sort of, I think because of his personality and who he is, like, he is the defense in a way. And I think they've done a great job going against them all summer and all off season. I knew they'd be pretty special this year. Just how they were flying around and moving. It's just one of the things you can feel. Obviously they have to play against different guys, but you can sort of feel it yourself when things just feel different. And I think that was this off season. And I love watching them, honestly, especially, this past game against Charlotte, when they can score 2 touchdowns, makes our job a little bit easier. So I'm fine with that. They can score as many touchdowns as they'd like.
They've been an incredible group. It's part of the reason, along with you guys on offense, why you're now ranked in the AP top 25. And also in an interesting situation this year with the expanded playoff. How much have you guys talked about that? The fact that if you guys are the highest ranked group of 5 school, again, the commander-in-chief is at the top of the list, we know, in terms of accomplishment, but having a real opportunity to make the college football playoff, is that something you guys talked about in the offseason and the preseason?
I wouldn't say that was what we talked about in the preseason, maybe like, a lot of the bigger teams, Ohio State, Notre Dame, how that might be their top goal, make that playoff. I think we really hadn't proved anything the last few seasons, and we really wanted to prove ourselves. And that starts from the beginning. And so I don't think we were looking too far past the beginning of our season. And most of our goals were, CIC, which is Notre Dame or Air Force and Army, obviously, and just really cementing a legacy for our seniors and starting our own legacy, going forward. And so obviously now with everything that's been going on in the 12-team playoff and how we've been performing, guys on the team like to talk about it here and there and all that, but I wouldn't say it's the forefront on our mind, obviously. And that goes to Coach Newberry and what he talks about in the 1-0 mentality. So I think that's pretty great.
So, Blake, we obviously talk a lot of football and a lot of college football as well, and college athletes, but you guys are certainly a bit different. Take us through a day. We're doing this obviously in the morning, this interview, but I'd imagine you've been up already for a while. Take us through a day where they say in the armed forces, football practice is the easiest part of your day. So take us through a normal day for you.
Yeah, I agree. Football is definitely a relief, but normal day, usually everyone gets up around 7 and we have formation in the morning and then breakfast right after. First class starts at 7:55 and then it's about hour increments from there. Lunch starts at about 11:30 and then goes to about 1:30. Usually around that time, we'll do either a lift or get treatment for football. And then I go 1:30 to 2:30. I have another class, cybersecurity. That's fun. And then after that, we go and get ready for practice meetings, go out to practice at 4, usually get out of, practice and treatment afterwards at about 7:30, go get dinner, come back, study, go to bed by, 11, hopefully on a good night if you don't have to study for any tests or anything the next day, and then wake up and do it all again.
It is an unbelievable workload that you guys shoulder there on and off the field in a way that we're all tremendously thankful for, as we said off the top of this interview. And I'd imagine you got to find a way to get yourself going throughout the course of a day like that. And I'm curious, I saw an interview you did before the season where you mentioned a particular pregame song. I want to know, is Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield still the last song that you play before going out the field, and how you landed on that song?
I mean, yes, it is. First off, yes, it is for sure. And I really got dragged into it. I went and saw this movie with my girlfriend. She really wanted to see that Anyone But You with Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. And so after I watched that one, it was a song that I enjoyed in my childhood, but you don't remember a lot of songs you just listened to when you were a little kid. And so when they come back and you hear them again, it's nostalgic and all this stuff, and you just really enjoy them. And so I heard that one and I loved it in the movie. And then it started really in spring practice. I sort of interpreted that or included that in my pre-practice mix. And so now it's just carried over and out of the games, and that's what I listen to.
Everyone out there, just know, when Blake Horvath's giving you buckets on the football field, he is doing so fueled by the power of Natasha Bedingfield and those poetic lyrics. I'm also a quality fan of film. Anyone But You was a fine movie. Really enjoyed that one. So, Blake, made of all the right stuff, man. It's been a ton of fun to watch you. As all kidding aside, best of luck this weekend. We're excited to watch you guys in what should be an awesome game. Thank you for what you're going to do, you and your teammates, for our country here after your time at the Academy. We really appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Blake.
I hate this dad. I like him. He's a great dude. He's an awesome quarterback. It's going to make this weekend a nightmare for me.
The hardest you play against the armed forces, say Navy, and the guys just get up after every play, hard hit. You hit them hard, knock down, get up. They're just dogged. Like I said, I think the football's the easy part for them, for the training that they go through outside of football. They're the toughest players I've ever played against. And again, I just go up to them and don't even talk football after the game. Just thank them for what they're going to do for us. It's the most conflicted I've ever been. You really have to put yourself in the moment of a football game to understand you're playing against an opponent, to then understand when it's over what they're going to do for us.
Well, and in a football sense now, what we talked about with Blake is such an interesting challenge for Notre Dame, who last year played Navy at the beginning of the season. You had all training camp to go over the triple option and try and prepare for that as best you could. If you're Marcus Freeman and Al Golden, you're doing it during the season, and you've got to defend against a very robust passing attack that's now a part of this offense, where usually among the academies, it was Air Force that did a lot more of the pre-snap stuff, gave you different looks, gave you stuff to account for. And while some of the cut block rules have changed, this Navy team, the window dressing is, there's tons of it now to go along with what's just bare bones, really good football at the core.
It's the most a defense has to play disciplined football. You have to play your responsibility and can't play hero ball, or you're going to give up a huge play. So that was always the mark of practicing to play a Navy, was play your position, play your responsibility, or you're going to leave a gaping hole in the defense for them to run through.
Yeah, I was going to say, or you're going to see Blake Horvath and the other skill players on this offense running towards the opposite end zone like we did when we played them in MetLife back in 2010 and got the score run up on us pretty good. Coming up next, we'll veer back into the NBA. Amin Elhassan going to join us off the top of the next hour on Gojo and Golic.
If you were dialed into NBA opening night last night, you may have missed the NHL's Frozen Frenzy. All 32 teams played last night. Haven't heard if Scott Hansen's head exploded with the 16 box going. Caps beat the Flyers 4-1. Those two teams face off again in the only game tonight with the Caps being favored. I like how the unspoken agreement between the NHL and NBA scheduling on opposite days pretty much gone up in smoke since the NBA changed their format. NHL says happy tip-off with every team playing. Maybe more drama in the future. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to get all the NBA drama next, though, as Amin Elhassan joins us in studio here. Stay tuned. That's coming up on Gojo and Golic.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Hour number 2 here. Jason Fitz going to join us to talk a little college football in about a half hour here. But we had tip-off for 4 NBA teams last night. We're going to get plenty more involved coming up tonight. And so we're excited to visit with Amin Elhassan here. You guys can check him out as the co-host of Oddball with Amin Elhassan, him and Charlotte Wilder, every day but Monday here on the DraftKings Network. Amin, how you doing, man?
I got to make a correction. It's every day but Friday now. This season, we're going to a different schedule. It's every day but Friday because Friday allows football to kind of preview the weekend ahead. It's streamlined. We're making it smarter here at DraftKings Network.
All right, There we go. Working smarter, not harder here. So every day but Friday now, I will update that in my brain and get us ready to go. So make sure you guys check that out. Going to be a staple throughout your NBA season. I got to join them for Trivia Tuesday this week, and I promptly sucked at it. So water is still wet in that regard. Amin, I wanted to ask you before we get into looking ahead too much. We had the games last night, and the Boston Celtics, where you're at right now out in the Boston studio, opened up a whole can of whoop-ass on the Knicks. Do you remember the worst loss that you were a part of during your time in the NBA and organizations?
Oh, man. I worked for the Knicks when they weren't as good as they are now, so you get numb. Actually, the first, 3 years of my NBA career, we got our head bashed in a lot because I worked for the Hawks before that. And so, you're asking me to remember something that I'm numb to. The blowouts never hurt. It's just kind of like we got our ass kicked. The ones that hurt are the ones that I never forget. The one, game 5 against the Lakers in 2010, game 1 against the Spurs in 2008. Like those ones where you lose Christmas Day against the Spurs in 2009. Like, those are the ones you never forget because they stay with you. This feeling of oh my God, we lost by 1 bucket or 1 missed layup or whatever it was. And those are the things that you never forget. The blowouts, you throw that out your brain immediately.
So the close ones, the ones that hurt, how quickly do you put them aside? In football, there's only 17 games, so they may stay with you a little more. But 82 games in basketball, how quickly do you put a bad loss aside?
Mike, you have to put it aside. You have to desensitize on some level in the NBA because, again, the whole idea is we lost to San Antonio. All right, great. Milwaukee's coming in 2 nights. Or we've got to go on this 4-game road trip. So you have to very quickly move on. Just like in a basketball game, if you miss a shot, you can't sit there I can't believe I missed that wide open shot. You've just got to move on. But the reality is, in those silent moments, those really tough losses, they stay with you forever, particularly those playoff ones. Not necessarily the elimination games. Obviously, elimination games ends your season. But like I said, I just rattled off 3 or 4 playoff games that were not the end of the series, but you just remember it forever. It stays with you forever. And I talk to guys that have won 5, 6 championships, and they always say the same thing. The games they remember that stay with them forever, those are those really tight losses.
So with that in mind, those sort of memories of slights as fuel or motivation there, how much are you buying Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on the revenge tour for this summer from what went down with the Olympic basketball team?
Well, obviously, game 1, it's very top of mind, right? This is the first game I have an opportunity to let everybody know. Our banner just went up. Our fans are going crazy. Of course, last night they were going to be very motivated. But the reality is, Gojo, in a month, in 2 months, you're worried about what's happening now. It's no longer what happened last season. It's very difficult to hold on to that fire and that passion for an entire year. Now, we get to the playoffs, it might come back some. There might be if Joe Mazzulla's video guy has his money earned, he's going to have the whole reel of everything that happened in the offseason to remind everybody, hey, this is what they thought about you guys. This is what they thought about you guys after you won a championship. That's the stuff that you can kind of stoke again. But once we get to the doldrums of the season, you got to be motivated for the night in front of you. You can't carry that fire. You're going to burn yourself out.
Is the one thing that stays consistent for Boston, whether it's game 1 or game 50, is Joe Mazzulla giving a weird comment?
Man, game 500, this guy is going to be, we call him Crazy Joe Mazzulla on Oddball. If you guys ever watched Seinfeld, remember Crazy Joe Davola? We got Crazy Joe Mazzulla in the NBA. So to me, I waver between, is this a very elaborate bit that he's doing all the time in character, or is this actually him? Either way, it is batshit crazy. And welcome it. Keep it coming. Yesterday they asked him, because he kissed the floor right before he walked out there to get his ring. They asked him, what did it taste like? And he said it tastes like blood. Or maybe wood. I don't know. But either answer works because it's crazy Joe Mazzulla.
Like I said, the fact that I hadn't even entertained the idea that maybe we had just misheard wood, because blood seems so painfully on brand for crazy Joe Mazzulla so far. With you on that one, I want to talk about the coach in the late game, though. We're spending so much time talking about LeBron and Bronny. What did you make of game one from J.J. Redick? Is there anything to take away from this right now as we get set for his first season at the helm?
Well, he had an emphasis on shooting more threes. They didn't by the end of the game, but early on they were definitely on pace to shoot a lot of threes, and that was something that he wanted to make a point of emphasis. More tempo also. But to me, the story of the game, there's two stories in the game. One was, just like the Knicks, the Timberwolves are going to take a time to adjust and build chemistry with all these new faces and having to embrace a new style of play because of the new faces. And then the other story was, we finally got it, LeBron and Bronny, they play together, yeah, okay. And now Bronny gets to go hang out in South Bay with the G League team for the rest of the year until like March or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's the takeaway, right? I mean, it was smart to get it done in the first game, did it with 4 minutes left in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. Lakers were winning, kind of get it out of the way type of deal.
Yeah, no, I talked about an oddball yesterday, I think, and we said, this is going to happen early. It's going to happen early enough in the game where obviously the outcome is not in question, but at the same time, we're not going to have to worry about, hey, if we're blowing them out or it's a blowout and we get Bronny in there, how will we get LeBron back in there? So you do in the first half, before halftime, get it out there, let them play up, run up and down, play with the one squad, and see how it works. And it worked kind of like what we thought it was going to work. Bronny looked scared. He looked a little unsure of himself, which is, he's a rookie. It's understandable. Right. He missed a wide open shot. I wonder if that means he's grounded. I don't know. Like, what happens? No allowance because you missed a wide open shot that your old man set you up for?
We'll talk about this on the car ride home when we get back in there. Don't ask your mother.
You know what the crazy thing is? There is a car ride home. He lives at home. He's there. They commute together. Like, as LeBron, they asked LeBron, said, is he going to call you dad? He said, no, he's not allowed to call me dad until we get back in the car on the way home. I'm like, oh, wait a second. He's not even getting like a little apartment by the practice facility or something like that? I mean, he can afford it.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's had money for a while. I'm stunned that he's still pulling that off, but I guess that's how you stay rich.
That's how you stay rich, exactly.
Let's move on to tonight's game. I mean, we already got the news that for the 76ers, no Paul George or Joel Embiid coming off night one. Is this careful planning or sort of foreshadowing of what's to come for this season?
Man, let me tell you something. We're over here at DraftKings Network, and this is the best analogy I can give. If you got a bet, you can either hedge your bet or you can hit a parlay, right? Now, the parlay has added risk because you need everything to happen right. What the Sixers did said, we're not hedging bets. We're going for the parlay. We're going to hope Embiid's healthy and Paul George is healthy when it matters, and this is going to give us all the riches there is. Whereas I think I would have probably gone in a different direction. I would have hedged my bets. Okay, Embiid's probably not going to be healthy at some point this year. Let me get someone who typically is healthy. That way, when this bet craps out, this bet hits. Daryl Morey said, no, I'm a riverboat gambler. Let me get my DraftKings Sportsbook. Let me build this parlay. Plus 9,000. Everything is going perfectly right for the Sixers. This isn't surprising if we look at the injury history of either of these guys. But again, it's night one. And I think Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse and Joel Embiid and Paul George will all say, we'll gladly sacrifice this one if we know, or if we can have a good feeling that April, May, June, these guys are going to be healthy and playing together.
Is there more concern in Milwaukee? We keep waiting for the three to play together, Dame and Giannis and Middleton. Mm-hmm. And now Middleton, because of off-season ankle surgery, is not going to start the season. Is that a little more ominous?
You know, Mike, it's weird because I think Middleton has been on a slide for the last couple of years. He's not what he was when they won the championship. And I don't even think they need him to be what he was when they won the championship. They just need some semblance of a guy who can be an offensive threat, hit some shots, and space the court and make things easier for those other two guys. But the reality is, Giannis Antetokounmpo, when he's healthy, is one of the 3 or 4 best basketball players in the world. And then Damian Lillard is one of the most clutch basketball players that we have. Last season, we got no development of chemistry between the two of them. There was no element of a 1-2 punch. It was kind of my turn, your turn. Doc Rivers had a whole offseason to think about this. They had a whole training camp to implement all this. So the hope is Giannis comes in healthy, Dame comes in a little re-energized, refocused, and we can get those synergies out of the two-man game playing, and then everybody else get in where you fit in, whether it's Brook Lopez, whether it's Pat Connaughton. One of the big acquisitions they had in the offseason was Gary Trent Jr. This is a guy who can defend 3 positions and hit the 3 and be a pretty offensive threat, a pretty serious offensive threat out there. So to me, if they can get solid contributions from their role players and get that chemistry going, I think Milwaukee is absolutely one of the best teams in the East and has a chance to go to the finals even.
One of the other games coming up, Suns at Clippers, and we know for the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard and his injury status now going to be one of the big stories of the season where they get ready to open the Intuit Dome. But for the Suns, I mean, we've talked so much about LeBron, Steph, and KD all coming towards the end of their career. Does this Suns team have the best chance of any of those 3 guys to actually make themselves a contender this season?
You know, it's funny you said towards the end of their career, and all 3 guys are like 25-plus points per game scorers. What end, right? But and this Suns team is stacked. And last year, what was the thing that everybody said about them? They don't have a point guard. And what was the thing that they said? We don't need a point guard. We have basketball players. And all of us were saying, hey, 75 years of this game tells us there's got to be one guy out there who's like, my job is to make sure everybody else is taken care of. Then, whether he's 6'9" or 6'1", there's got to be someone whose first inclination is to get everybody involved and keep this thing humming. They told us they didn't need one. They needed one. Spoiler alert. And so they went out this all season. They got not just one, they got 2 really good point guards in Tyus Jones and Monte Morris. And I think even though those aren't like marquee, sexy names that people are buying basketball cards for or whatever kids are doing, NFTs, is that still a thing? NFTs? Who knows? Yeah. But the point is, they addressed their need. And then they also went out and got Mason Plumlee, who is a better backup center, I think, than Drew Eubanks was last year. So I think this Suns team is really well positioned to make a deep run. Mike Budenholzer, new coach there, just like J.J. Redick, he's going to put an emphasis on shooting way more threes. I think the Suns are going to have an opportunity to do something special. But let me tell you right now, don't count out those Warriors. I think the Warriors quietly made their team better by doing the thing that helped them in years past, which is having veteran supporting cast with high IQ, guys who know how to play. DeAnthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson. These guys, I know, again, not sexy names, but it's like they aren't young guys like what they were trying to trot out there in years past.
Wow. Wow. All right. You know what? Something to keep an eye on there. That's why you got to check out Oddball every day but Friday right now on the DraftKings network for the pearls of wisdom like that from our buddy Amin Elhassan. Amin, you're the best, man. We appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your time in Boston, and we'll wait to see if this parlay can hit for the 76ers.
I'm going to catch a flight. I can't stand this city.
Run while you can. Go back to the warmth before it gets too cold out there. Dad, the Golden State Warriors, a team that I had sort of forgotten about over the course of this process, is like Amin said, they had so many young guys last year. You're finally moving on from Klay Thompson. If that's a team that somehow finds a way to resurrect itself around Steph Curry, who, remember, Steve Kerr said was the only guy whose starting job was secure going into camp, that would be such a plot twist for this season.
That would be an absolute plot twister because we know that the Western Conference is deeper than the Eastern Conference. So if Golden State were to knock on that door and make a run, that would definitely surprise me.
And as Amin pointed out, we do talk about the demise of these players that just led the U.S. men's national team to a gold medal in the Olympics over in Paris and are now all getting ready to lead their team in points throughout this season. Some things change, some things stay the same as the NBA season turns. All right, the group of guests just keep rolling through. Thanks to Amin Elhassan for breaking down the NBA with us. Jason Fitz now kind enough to join us here on Gojo and Golic. You guys can check him out, the Yahoo Sports Inside Coverage, Yahoo Sports College Football Power Hour. All great stuff over there. Fitzy, how we feeling this morning?
Oh, feeling good. I mean, we're only a couple of weeks away, a couple of weeks away from the college football playoffs, so we can stop talking about the AP poll. And man, it feels like things are good right now. This is a weird season for the NFL and for college football, so it's actually more fun than usual.
Yeah, this sounds like cope from you, because I feel like you're just happy that all of this news about Cooper Kupp potentially on the trade block, the DeAndre Hopkins trade this morning, are all masking the stink that was and the thought that was maybe Max Crosby was the next on the chopping block for the Raiders.
Yeah, by the way, clearly Max came out again on another clip and was like, I don't know what I have to say to make people understand I'm not going anywhere. He did stress that he doesn't control the business side of it, so he can't say with 100% certainty because he doesn't have full control. He doesn't want to be anywhere. But we're going to take these little nuggets because, frankly, I want Max to go somewhere and win football games, but that ain't going to happen. Max is going to be a Raider, and Cooper Kupp's going to go somewhere else, which, by the way, Inside Coverage told you a couple of weeks ago, Cooper Kupp was going to be on the trading block, so we were a little ahead of that. And DeAndre Hopkins gets freed from the purgatory known as having to play with Will Levis.
Oh, goes from Will Levis to Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's a pretty good upgrade in offenses for sure. But let's jump back to college. We have I think 7 undefeateds in the top 25, 7 or 9 undefeateds in the top 25. How deep is the run for a national championship?
That's a really good question, because there's a fatal, so think about where the fatal flaws start. And the most fatally flawed undefeated team is Miami, who's a joy to watch, but their defense doesn't belong on a football field at all, right? So if you start thinking about where we get to the fatal flaws, I think Miami gets caught up with if they're playing a really good team that has complementary football on both sides of the ball. So I don't particularly believe in Iowa State. Indiana is a really great story, but I'm not sitting here booking Indiana into a national championship contender. So I think a lot of the undefeateds are not really part of the national championship conversation. So we're probably 6-7 deep, but boys, I think the other side of this is utter chaos. Yes, we're going to get utter chaos in the first couple of rounds of the playoffs, but man, I just don't think that there are really 12 teams out there capable of winning a national title. I want Boise State to get into the playoffs so we can see Ashton Genty, their running back, run against the best of the best again, but I don't think Boise State has a chance at actually winning it all.
For Oregon, who sits at the number 1 spot now, are you actually buying them as the best team in college football? They've got a great win against Ohio State. We understand Georgia already has the blemish on their resume, but do you think Oregon is actually the best team in the sport right now?
So on paper coming in, Mike, I thought they were from day one, and I don't think they lived up to that hype for a lot of these games. And you and I have talked about this a few times. Dillon Gabriel's numbers are incredible. Dillon Gabriel's good for a couple throws a game that make me say, what the heck are you doing? And he got away with it in the first half against Michigan State. He had 2 throws in the red zone that were picked that were just inexcusable. It wasn't one of those, I see what he's going for. It was just like, why are you doing that? And he's done that several times. So I worry a little bit that Dillon Gabriel can at times be kind of careless with the football. But that being said, yeah, I think, frankly, a week ago, it looked like Texas was untouchable. And now Texas, obviously, they got just taken behind the woodshed and beaten down. So, yeah, Oregon becomes the best team. But if I had to bet y'all's house, because I don't bet my house, I'm too cheap. If I had to bet y'all's house on any one team to win it all this year, I don't think right now I'd be comfortable with any of those bets. You could sell me pretty easily that Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State all have the ability to win the championship.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Ohio State, who had the 1-point loss to Oregon. Mike, let me ask you. They lose their stud left tackle. Could be the first tackle off the board in Josh Simmons. We always talk about injuries to quarterbacks or wide receivers or specialty type players. How big of a deal is this of losing your stud left tackle?
I think Justin's a very good player. I don't think he's in that class with like Will Campbell or with Kelvin Banks at Texas. I don't think he's in that grouping of guys, but very good player on a group that had played a lot better than we'd seen in the past there. And so I don't think that's a little thing. I think Ohio State generally tends to have good depth along the line of scrimmage, but when you're dealing in the margins with those teams up top, we always talk about it. The 12-team playoff especially is going to reward depth as much as anything. And so the longer you can go into the season without massive loss at that, it's why when we talk about Notre Dame as a potential college football playoff fringe team, it's one of those things where, yes, making it would be great for them, but right now Notre Dame has already lost so much depth along the lines of scrimmage and the secondary with Benjamin Morrison that I think they would struggle to make the kind of run that you would have thought at the beginning of this year they were capable of, because, Jason, once you get to that time of year, that's what you're going to need. Usually in the BCS era and the 14 playoff, you had time to get healthy. Now it's going to be, hey, how many guys do you have that can help you sort of do that on the fly? And so for Ohio State, relative to Oregon, who they've already lost to in the Big Ten, relative to Georgia, relative to Texas, that's definitely a big blow versus those teams.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, we both know this. We all know this. How many years have we talked about games lost to starters to injury is a huge metric in the NFL. If you start to look deep in the playoffs and you try and figure out who won the Super Bowl, more often than not, it's a team that was in the top 3 for least games lost by starters to injury. That's a weird nugget, but it's real. So in the college football landscape, it's going to be the same thing. This attrition of playoffs, this is a lot of extra games for these guys. Like, depth will be tested, Mike. You're right. And for me, when we start looking at the playoff conversation, I look at everything like a tag team. And I don't care if we're talking about college football or the NFL. I no longer think it's about having a quarterback or a coach. I think it's about having both that have an identity that sort of align together. So when you think about the teams that are truly dominant at the highest level, they have this sort of alignment between their coach and their quarterback that works. When I look at Ohio State, as much as on paper, the $20 million team we keep talking about looks really talented, I got to trust in a big game, Will Howard and Ryan Day. And look, I want to have that level of trust, but I'm hurt. I'm broken. We all know that Ryan Day in those big games has had there've been some little moments. So like Will Howard, I don't have that much proof of concept. So I just get a little bit worried in that one.
All right, let me ask you about who you trust from that standpoint, from coach and quarterback with identity, from the group of teams sitting at 6 through 9 in the college football AP poll right now. Miami, Cam Ward and company down there. Tennessee with Nico Iamaleava. LSU with Garrett Nussmeier, or Clemson with Cade Klubnik and the performance that he's put on so far this season. Jason, of those teams, quarterback and coach with identity, who do you trust most in that group?
Yeah, the answer is Clemson, and I'll say that while also acknowledging that I gave up on Clemson at the beginning of the year. Y'all know I stand up and say when I was wrong. I was wrong about Clemson. But if you look at the rest of those, we have seen some boneheaded coaching decisions flat out cost Miami the game. We all know that. We all remember that from last year, right? Like you talk about, I got to trust Brian Kelly. We all know Brian Kelly. I'm not trusting Brian Kelly. Nussmeier, I'm trusting. I don't know if I'm trusting Kelly in that situation. So you go up and down that list, like fatal flaw each side. Dabo in big games is still Dabo. And Cade Klubnik, especially as we talked about, Mike, using his legs a little bit more, he's really opened up over the last few weeks. He's playing like a guy that's going to be in New York for the Heisman. I believe in Clemson at this point, especially I think Clemson, neutral field, Clemson, Miami today. If I had to bet all of our houses, I'm taking Clemson to win the ACC.
Listen, Jason, I was right there with you. I counted Clemson out. I thought they would be down. I knew the defense would be good, but boy, that offense has really, really picked up the slack to be one of the top teams in the country. Speaking of mentioning the top teams, like the top 10, a team that we haven't mentioned that normally we do, Alabama, is actually 5-2, 7 games in, ranked 14th, was it 15th in the country. What kind of reception do you think Kalen DeBoer is getting in Birmingham at this point?
Y'all
Tuscaloosa.
There are, I call them Wizard of Oz isms in broadcasting, where it's like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, where we're like, hey, throw out the records when these two teams play. Like we say this all the time when we know it's a bad matchup and we're trying to sell people on it. It sunk into me the other day when we were doing inside coverage. That's exactly what we're going to say about the Iron Bowl in a couple of weeks. There are still losses ahead of Alabama on the schedule, and Auburn stinks. Like I think, honestly, it's stuck in my head. Late in the game, Alabama had the chance they got a 4th and 7. They had the chance to turn around and try and continue the drive. Still a difficult play, but a boneheaded personal foul afterwards ends up at a 15-yard penalty, takes them to 4th and 22. The player stood on the sideline after that, and he was in his feels. They had the camera right in his face. But what blew my mind is nobody else was in his crawl. And like, you just think about the standard is the standard, the Tomlinism that Gojo taught me. The standard is the standard, and how you do anything is how you'll do everything. You talk about the number of penalties in that game,
And then the lack of just what the heck are we doing from the entire coaching staff, to me, that speaks to the fact that it's a different culture. And that doesn't mean Alabama's broken forever. It just means when you take this culture change from the intensity of Saban and you take a little bit off of that, because that's not how you do business, and you end up with Kalen DeBoer, you can be a very good coach, but that's going to cost you 3 games in the new SEC. Like, that's simply going to cost Alabama. So I don't think Alabama's dead in the water forever. I think Alabama this year is going through the culture change we should have anticipated. It's why Bama fans killed me in the preseason when I said they'd lose 3 games. Guess what? They're on track in my mind to still lose 3 games. And now all of a sudden we're going to be sitting around saying, because Bama is not going to be patient. They are not going to accept being 3rd or 4th best in the SEC for very long.
No, the thing that Bama fans are going to struggle with is now they're a very good team like everybody else. They were different and special before, and now they're still more talented. Most of the teams they're going to face. Kalen DeBoer is a better coach than most of the coaches in college football, but all of that change in the dynamic now, there is a lack of that off-the-bus fear that existed with Alabama before for so many years, and you're right. They got to go on the road to play LSU. They're not going to be favored in that game as we currently stand right now, and everything changed after the Vanderbilt loss. Dad, if they had gone up till this point and beaten Vanderbilt in the close one and beaten a close one in South Carolina, and then lost to Tennessee in the 3rd Saturday in October in a rivalry game against a Tennessee team that was already ranked near the top of college football, the reception wouldn't be totally different. But when you've already lost to a team you didn't lose to for 40 years prior to that, it changes in the minds of people around there. And so no more benefit of the doubt. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
I mean, the regular season potential, I think, Jason, you're right. I think they could lose 3 games. When's the last time they lost 3 games in the regular season? I mean, and the culture is different there. There's no doubt about it. It's naturally going to be different. I mean, Alabama fans can't expect the same culture there with a different coach.
It's also one of those things, though, Dad, I think the biggest difference right now is for Nick Saban, what do we talk about over the course of a number of years? For a while, they were quarterback agnostic. They could win with the totality of the defense, the boa constrictor style, things like that. Kalen DeBoer came in, and he's known as the quarterback guy. You go back to Indiana with Michael Penix, Washington with Michael Penix, Jake Haener at Fresno State. He's been the guy that's connected with that position at a high level. Jalen Milroe just does not seem like he's that guy right now. Last year, Alabama had to work around some of his inefficiencies as a passer, and this year you're watching him in an offense that's supposed to be incredibly quarterback solvent, miss on some easy throws, miss on stuff when the pocket's not muddy, and he doesn't have to turn this into an athletic show of force. And so unless he can make massive strides down the rest of the year, which I think we've seen enough of a sample size to say he's a guy that's going to make plays sometimes, got a nice deep ball and a great scramble ability, but everything else after that, you're going to maybe only get some of the time. And I think that at the heart of an offense that needs a quarterback to be great, at least from what we've seen so far, makes this team one that ultimately is going to fall short more often than not in some of these big games.
Yeah. By the way,
I agree. I completely agree. Jason, I want to ask you this. We got less than a minute, but we just beat around the bush to the most important question. Does Notre Dame beat Navy Saturday?
Yeah, Notre Dame beats Navy, but I will say this. Everybody that hasn't watched Navy, this is not what you're used to. This Navy team can throw the football all over the place, and they do it in really imaginative ways. Like, we're used to this just sloppy, ugly, service academy offense out of Army and Navy. That is not the case for Navy anymore. Like, they're going to have to be equipped. Notre Dame's going to have to be very disciplined, and Notre Dame's going to have to be ready to get challenged on the back end of this defense. This quarterback is not getting enough cred. Navy's not getting enough cred. I think it's atrocious that game day didn't go to this game. Like, to me, this is like we sit here every year and we hear that the service academy game, Army Navy is the most important game in the entire year. We have to honor it. Now we have the service academies playing meaningful football that matters to the college football playoff, and game day's not there. It's a joke. It's a joke. But yeah, I think Notre Dame pulls out a very close win. And when that happens, I don't want people to say, how did you barely beat Navy? I want people to go back and watch Navy getting to this point. Really good football team.
Yes, please respect Navy, because Lord knows I do, and I'm terrified of an incredibly young defense that's already been often injured facing this triple option team in the middle of the season in the noon game on ABC. What were we thinking? Oh, God. Jason Fitz. Check him out at Jason Fitz on Twitter. Check him out doing great work hosting over at Yahoo Sports. Fitzy, we appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, boys.
Coming up next, we talked about the best team in college football. Let's ask who's the worst team in the NFL here on Gojo and Golic. Ooh.
Gojo and Golic, Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. We've talked about a couple teams that are way down in the rankings in the NFL this week. We talked about the Browns. We talked about the Patriots. We talked about one of the disasters in the Meadowlands, but not the other one. So let's talk about the Giants, who have major issues. I'm talking major. After Saquon Barkley really embarrasses them, makes them regret their decisions that we saw happening on Hard Knocks. Daniel Jones was pulled in the middle of the game, and Brian Daboll's reasoning for why he did that has some people scratching their heads.
I'm just going to continue to prepare and try to play as well as I can. Daboll can, it's his team, and up to him to make those decisions. Obviously, I believe in myself and believe, in this offense. So I'm just going to focus on myself.
You'd like to, we have some guys around him that I think can create explosive plays. And we'll just go back to the drawing board and do the very best we can to, try to improve that area, which, for 2 weeks in a row, but, it's been a little bit longer than that. We haven't created them, and we need to.
Been a little bit longer than that. Yeah, it sure has. We're scratching our heads because Daniel Jones is still going to be the starter. He believes in himself, guys. Okay, so obviously that'll be fine. So the Giants, where do they rank in your bottom 5 rankings? And, I mean, what's going on here? How do we move forward from this situation? You can't really because they paid the guy.
Well, there can after this year. We always knew the Daniel Jones extension was sort of a 2-year prove-it deal with a bunch of the guaranteed money front-loaded. And so this was the prove-it season where they were going to see, is this 2022 Daniel Jones that helped us go to the playoffs around an offense that was in Brian Daboll's first year, a more rushing-centric one, or was it going to evolve to something else? Would the addition of Malik Neighbors allow them to push beyond that and add a downfield passing attack? And, Dad, while it's not all Daniel Jones' fault, as we know, at this point, big enough sample size to see, he's not going to be the Giants' quarterback of the future. Now, they're not the worst team in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers have put severe distance between themselves and nearly everyone else in this conversation. Maybe the Las Vegas Raiders mixed into that as well. And I think the Giants are probably a step above that. But this is also not a team that I believe has their quarterback of the future on the roster. And so that's sort of the awkward rub for the rest of the season is this isn't the guy. You've got a decision to make, but he still gives you the best chance to win here and now, even if that doesn't mean much.
So that's what I look at as far as worst teams. And when I say worst teams, we'll say 1 or 2 losses. Where are they in the quarterback situation, right? So obviously you look at 1 or 2 losses, you look at the Jets. Is Aaron Rodgers going to get another year? They're going to try and run it back for one more year. New England has 1 loss. It looks like Drake May is going to be the guy. The Cleveland Browns are absolutely going to look for a quarterback. The Tennessee Titans, do you think they look for a quarterback, or do you think they have faith in Will Levis? What do you think there?
No, I think if Will Levis keeps this up, and listen, we heard from Brian Callahan said, when Will Levis is healthy, our goal for this year is to get a good look at Will Levis. It's why they went out and got Calvin Ridley this offseason and why they went out and added some of the hodgepodge of weapons. So I do think Will's going to get a look this year. I don't think he's going to end up being their quarterback beyond this year based off what we've seen.
So we'll say that's trending down. The Vegas, the Raiders, they're absolutely going to look for a quarterback. The Giants are going to look for a quarterback. The Panthers, we know, are going to look for a quarterback. New Orleans, they stay with Derek Carr. I mean, and then there's the Rams. Stafford is going to be there as well. The Saints, I don't know what's going to go on with Derek Carr. But so that to me is the biggest question of the 1 and 2 lost teams. And if you have a quarterback, at least you have something to build around, like in New England. You say, okay, Drake May is going to be our guy. Well, we can either trade. I talked about this the other day. We're going to have a high pick. We can trade for capital, or we can get a stud player either on offense or defense, maybe offense, to try and build around Drake May, while the others, they have to go quarterback.
Yeah, I think, like, there are some teams in this, like, yeah, the Jets have 2 losses, or 2 wins, but they're not like the rest of these teams. Like, they're actually capable of doing a little bit more than that on their best day. The Los Angeles Rams, I do think the under-talked about part of what the Cooper Kupp trade signals is less like, I know there was the weird Stafford rumors going around the other day that I don't really buy and were never substantiated anywhere. Like you said, he's going to be there. McVay's a good coach. They've got some really good young parts on defense. Jared Verse has been balling. The Cooper Kupp, the willingness to trade Cooper Kupp, to me, signals something about what Puka Nacua's future this season looks like. Because if you believed that guy was going to come back in time to have a meaningful effect on football, I can't imagine you'd be trading Cooper Kupp knowing what you saw last season down the stretch when him and Stafford and them were all on the field healthy at the same time. So I don't know that. That's not coming from anywhere. It's just one of those things where reading the tea leaves, it feels like that. But that's still a team that's got too many good guys in the building when healthy. Hell, we thought they were going to be a Super Bowl contender for the start of the season. I was very wrong, and injury changed that tune quickly, but they're not really in that group, Dad. So to me, it's kind of the Panthers and the Raiders, I think, truly vying for the worst team in the NFL and the way we look at them. And I guess probably the Titans mixed into that as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And you wonder, of all those teams I mentioned, probably 4 or 5 are looking for a quarterback. Are there that many quarterbacks? I mean, we had 6 go in the first round. We always talked about this class coming up not being as good. Are there 4 or 5 worthy first-round quarterbacks for these teams to go after?
Well, Dad, and the interesting part about that is some of these guys we're talking about are going to get shots elsewhere. I saw Diana Rossini in the midst of all her reporting yesterday say that there are GMs looking into Bryce Young at the trade deadline to see, hey, if the Carolina Panthers, like, I don't understand, like, you're shuffling deck chairs in the Titanic with that quarterback situation. You brought Andy Dalton in to try and see if you could make things happen, and it did one game, you got that bump, and then after that, it's been the same brand of bad you were getting before. I see plenty of people saying, why wouldn't you put Bryce Young back in there? My guess is probably you're going to try and trade him and get something in return for him, or at the very least you understand that there's nothing meaningful to get done here. You're moving on from him after the season, and so let's shut the door and do all that. But when you look at some of these guys, like, Dad, if you're a team out there, and let's just assume for the moment you can get them both out of the bargain bin for a similar price, would you rather take a chance on a guy like Daniel Jones or a guy like Bryce Young at the points they're at in their career right now? Will Levis, if you shuffle this around a little bit, are there any of these guys in the right circumstance that you think actually could go out and perform?
You know, you're hoping for like at least to this point, a Sam Darnold situation, right? Fail with the Jets, was a backup in San Francisco, and certainly started out the season extremely well for Minnesota. Have him at 5-1. He kind of slipped up a little bit the last game or two, but that's what you're looking for. And when you're a high pick, you get a number of chances. You get more chances maybe than you deserve at some point, but that's just the nature of the position and where you get picked, is you will get chances. And Darnold on his third chance. Baker Mayfield, I mean, from Cleveland to Carolina to the Rams to Tampa Bay. Now look at him. You know, it's working out for him. So you're right. They'll get chances somewhere else, not to be the automatic starter, but to try and be the starter, and some may click somewhere.
Daniel Jones would be a fascinating guy if they don't bring back Joe Flacco and with the Colts to put behind Anthony Richardson. Then now I just think about it out loud, because of the guys that we just mentioned there, Daniel Jones is the one that I would swing on if I was another team there, just because big physical guy. I think you've seen more production-wise from him, certainly anything than you've seen from Bryce Young or Will Levis, albeit in much smaller sample sizes. There's the warts, but I just also truly believe, Dad, that the roster around Daniel Jones was never really in a place that was going to be able to help him, particularly up front on that offensive line. He is not without his flaws, but between all the coaching changes and the things that came up in his career, he's someone that if he got a chance to take a breath, be a backup somewhere, and get in a healthier situation, I'd be curious to see, because he's got the most in terms of physical gifts to work with. And again, some production you can point to as a guy contributing in this league.
Hey, you just brought up another guy. I mean, they have a winning record. They're 4-3, but Anthony Richardson has been anything but spectacular this year, completing under 50% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's one to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, it's been awful. I mean, you don't have to sugarcoat it. Obviously got banged up in a bit. There's a bunch about his early career trajectory that hasn't been helpful to a guy that didn't start that many games in college, and we knew needed time and reps. And I think for this Colts team, you're ultimately not a high-end playoff team, even if Joe Flacco's out there for the rest of the season. And so you got to deal with the growing pains to try and go and give Anthony Richardson every shot that he possibly can. But so far, it's been really hard to come by anything that even closely resembles hope there. Coming up next, we'll finish it up the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to end the day on Gojo and Golic. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you to the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. But if you have to miss us live for whatever reason or any of our great guests, and we had a bunch of them show up today, thank you to Blake Horvath, the starting quarterback for the Navy football team, for stopping by. Amin Elhassan, you can check out as the co-host of Oddball with Amin Elhassan and Charlotte Wilder every day but Friday on the DraftKings Network. And our buddy Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports. All of them, if you missed the interviews live, you can catch wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. This segment, This, That, and the Third, is brought to you by our friends at Knockaround. Knockaround have been day one supporters of Gojo and Golic. Head to knockaround.com and use code Gojo Golic, that's Gojogolic, to pick up your new go-to pair of polarized shades. And everyone mixing it up today. Jessie has the Campiones, the model there that she's been rocking for a while now as our resident villain from an 80s movie. Dad went with the, Torrey Pines this week, Dad, out in Arizona?
Torrey Pines. Yeah, out in Arizona, I got the Torrey Pines. I left the...
Oh, you left
the Shark
Week
in South Bend. Yeah, I left them in South Bend, for when I go back.
Variety's the spice of life. That's why this week, if you're a Chiefs fan that wanted to celebrate them getting DeAndre Hopkins in the trade, we got the Chiefs sunglasses right here. They've got Major League Baseball shades in the mix as well. World Series getting started on Friday. You got the Yankees sunglasses right here. Tasteful, understated, easy to rock around wherever you go. So, as you see, plenty of frame styles, sunglasses for all occasions and supporting all your favorite teams. Head to knockaround.com, support them, they support us, and they make you phenomenal sunglasses at a price that won't break the bank. Guys, speaking of breaking the bank, let's get to this, that, and the third. Texas high school football, they say everything's bigger in Texas, but my oh my, as someone that played my high school football in Central Connecticut, this might as well be crash landing on Mars. The Willis Textric School District is seeking a $68.8 million bond for a new football stadium with a capacity of $8,500. It would be one of the most expensive projects in the history of Texas high school football. Dad, as a part of that bond package, it would ring up to $115.4 million. The Willis School District would include a proposal for that football stadium in the mix. So, Dad, you've been exposed to a lot more than this. You played high school football in Ohio that certainly loves this sport a certain way. But seeing what they pour into Friday Night Lights in Texas will never not knock me on my ass.
It's unbelievable. Listen, growing up and playing in Northeast Ohio, we had thousands at our games. It was certainly a letdown for you and your brother Jake in Connecticut, where it was basically family and friends. It was more of a soccer town than a football town. It was tough as a football family, believe me. There is nothing quite like Texas football and what they do. Forgetting the stadiums, the workout rooms as well. The facilities that they have, they rival some colleges. It is absolutely stunning, and they get the money for it because people shut down on Friday nights in Texas. They shut down businesses. They shut down everything to watch their high school football.
It is amazing that this project, adjusting for inflation, would only be the 7th most expensive high school football stadium built in Texas over the last 20 seasons. You look around, the other projects in Katy and McKinney, which rang up $72 million and $70 million bills, respectively. There was one in Prosper that cost a little bit less than $60 million. And so this is truly just keeping up with the Joneses in the state of Texas when it comes to football. An insane price tag. Jesse, let's get to that and talk about something maybe a little bit more normal, maybe.
Yeah, an airport in New Zealand is doing its best to speed things along, hurry up what is apparently traffic jams at the airport. So they're instituting a 3-minute goodbye limit for passengers getting dropped off. And my jaw dropped because 3 minutes is a long time, you guys. What is going on in New Zealand? Are these people I don't know anything about New Zealanders. Are they super nice? Are they like trying to carry your bags for you? Like, what's going on? Because 3 minutes is a lifetime for a goodbye at the airport.
I'm stunned at the 3 minutes. I mean, I love what it says. Max hug time 3 minutes, worn signs outside the terminal, adding that those seeking fonder farewells should head to the airport's parking lot. What the hell's a fonder farewell? I mean, what are we talking about here? I mean, oh my God, go to the parking lot for it? Bow chicka bow wow. I mean, seriously, but Jesse, I'm with you. 3 minutes? I mean, that would seem like a lifetime when you're parked there at the curb to get out, get your stuff, and get in. 3 minutes would seem like there is no way. I mean, the airport security would shoo you away in 30 seconds, let alone 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's the thing here. Jesse hints on it is it's got to be cultural difference because you never worry about this happening in the U.S. at an airport. But with any sign, I always wonder, and I remember I saw a sign telling people in Amsterdam in an alley not to poop in the alley. And I realized enough people had to have pooped in that alley to make the sign for not pooping in the alley something that needed to become a reality. And so this must just be a place where people are very loving at the airport, which honestly, part of that warms my heart knowing the airport culture in America is so cold, selfish, and unfeeling. So I'm happy that the New Zealanders have this much love in their life, but also speed this up, man. Like if I had to do my TED Talk, it would be on airport etiquette, and you can't be taking up that kind of space, not worrying about everybody else in the vicinity just because you want to get your hug off there. Not dropping them off at the curb already is such a marked departure from what I'm used to.
Yeah. I mean, are there car lines, Jesse? I mean, are you backing up traffic if everybody gets 3 minutes?
It's got to be so bad right now that they had to institute this as a rule. So it must be that you show up to the airport and you're like, it takes you 20 minutes to get to where you got to drop people off because people are getting out of their cars and hugging each other and packing a bag. I don't know what's going on.
I will say this, on the list of things you could do in the airport to tick me off, very low on the list is just hugging, because this, again, and I'm assuming it's outside of security because, for all the reasons that we know. So you're not in the highest traffic areas of the airport yet, even if airport security lines and TSA lines can spill out there. So this still doesn't tick me off quite as much as some of the other stuff y'all do in the airport. But again, apparently enough, they got to put up a sign.
Yeah, because there are so many things in the airport. You're right. A TED Talk on that alone would be interesting and have a lot of tidbits, because there are a lot of pet peeves.
Saw a young woman that took it on herself to take all of the bins from the TSA security line and put them over in the bin removal robot thing at the end of them when they were stacking up there, and a single tear rolled down my face. She didn't do it for anybody but for love of the game. That's the kind of people we need in the foxhole with us as we get set to travel. Jesse, let's get to the third, though. This is a show that appreciates a good movie popcorn bucket, and a new one just dropped, so we have to see if anyone's going to try and have sex with it.
Yeah, this one, actually, it seems like they've taken a clue from the other ones, and they're actually there's only one place to put something. It's where the popcorn goes. Okay, there's no other orifices on this popcorn bucket. The Gladiator popcorn bucket is here, so they have a QR code. This is cool, that activates an AR Gladiator battle in it. So you got to eat all your popcorn, and then you can scan the code, and they're going to be fighting in there in the bucket, which is kind of cool. But yeah, like I said, they learned from the other ones. There's no other hole somewhere that you could put something.
Honestly, given the stars of this movie, I am a little surprised we didn't get a hornier popcorn bucket. That being said, this is actually the functionally coolest one, Dad, and obviously Gladiator was the first R-rated movie I ever saw as a kid. I so vividly remember my dad taking me and my brother, getting us ready to go into this movie, watching Maximus go out there on this warpath for revenge, and so there's a ton of nostalgia built into this, and they have created the coolest popcorn bucket. I mean, I think every guy, we talk about, how often guys think about the Roman Empire. I don't know about the Empire, but I think about the Gladiator stuff a lot. And so having a popcorn bucket replica of that would kick ass.
Who doesn't try and imagine themselves in the Gladiator arena, seeing if they could get out alive? And by the way, you guys were too young to go to an R-rated movie, and I took you to it because it was Gladiator, and I call that good parenting, because that movie is one of the great movies of all time. I can't. And you wonder about sequels, how they're going to do so, but I can't wait, and I pray this is a good one. I'm so looking forward to it. But very cool bucket. I do like it.
Yeah, I would say most people are excited about the Pedro Pascal and Paul Mescal of it all, which, again, Paul Mescal still sounds like the made-up porn version name of Pedro Pascal, just copy-pasted with a little bit younger on the other side. But either way, I'm ready for it to kick ass. I am thankful that this popcorn bucket isn't going to give people impure thoughts, and I'm thankful that this show probably didn't for you guys either. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Even if it did, leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow.